She was forced to have a baby with a cold millionaire, but the baby made him a new man, a great love story. Hi, my beautiful, precious, irreplaceable family. It's your Mr. Peter. Before I say anything else, I want to wrap you in something soft, something gentle. A prayer just for you. I pray love finds you again, even if life has made you forget how it feels. I pray peace holds your heart, even on the days it trembles. That healing comes to every broken space inside you, and that you never again feel unseen or unworthy. You are not alone. You are not forgotten. You are loved more than words will ever be able to say. Now please hear me, not as a YouTuber, but as your brother. Yesterday, I contacted YouTube to ask why my channel is falling so fast, and their reply broke me. They said, "Your regular viewers, the ones who used to watch with love, now skip your videos." They don't show the same response. I was silent. I said, "I can't believe this." They replied, "You have to believe it." I was in tears because I thought, have my family members stopped trusting me? Have I failed the very people I write for? I'm not blaming anyone. I'm just hurting. I'm giving all I have, even through health struggles and heart pain. And yet every day I wonder, is YouTube pushing me down, or is my family letting go of me? I'm confused, I'm heartbroken, and yes, I've thought of quitting, but here I am, still showing up, still writing, still loving you. So I ask you, not as a request, but as a piece of my soul. Please like this video, comment from your heart. Share it with someone you love, just a few seconds of your time, but it tells the world we're still standing, together. And please, family, don't leave the story in the middle. Every second I wrote is filled with love. For you. When you skip it, it feels like you're skipping me. This isn't just a channel, it's our home, our connection, our love. With every beat of my heart, even the ones that hurt. Forever, your Mr. Peter. Some deals with the devil come wrapped in silk and signed with tears. Monica Bessel stood at the precipice of everything she had ever known, staring at the contract that would either save her mother's life or destroy her own soul. The leather portfolio trembled in her hands as rain lashed against the towering windows of Whitehead Industries, each drop like a gunshot in the cathedral silence of the marble lobby. At 28, she had imagined many futures for herself. None of them involved carrying a stranger's child for money. But desperation was a cruel master, and her mother's cancer had devoured their savings like a ravenous beast, leaving Monica with nothing but impossible choices and a heart full of ashes. The elevator doors whispered open, and darkness walked out wearing Armani. Barry Whitehead emerged like a fallen angel ascending from the depths, and Monica's breath died in her lungs. At 35, he was power incarnate, 6 feet 3 inches of lethal grace wrapped in a charcoal suit that cost more than most people earned in a year. His steel-grey eyes held the cold fire of winter storms, and his perfectly sculpted face could have been carved from marble by a master with a cruel sense of perfection. Every line of his body spoke of a predator who had never known defeat, never tasted weakness, never bent the knee to anyone. Miss Bessel. His voice poured over her like dark honey laced with poison, smooth, intoxicating, and utterly dangerous. I trust you've had adequate time to consider the terms of our arrangement. Monica forced herself to meet his glacial stare, even as her pulse hammered like thunder in her veins. She had expected wealth, sophistication, perhaps even conventional handsomeness. She had not expected this. A man who looked like sin personified and radiated power like heat from a furnace. "I have, Mr. Whitehead," she managed, her voice steady despite the chaos in her chest. $5 million in exchange for 9 months of my life. A child for a fortune, quite the bargain. Barry's lips curved in what might have been a smile if it had contained even a trace of warmth. Instead, it was all sharp edges and predatory satisfaction. I prefer to think of it as a business transaction, Miss Bessel. I acquire what I need. You receive compensation, clean, simple, and refreshingly free of the messy complications that emotion tends to create. He moved closer, each step calculated and deliberate, like a panther stalking its prey. The scent of his cologne, something dark and expensive that spoke of power and danger, wrapped around Monica like invisible chains. "You see," Barry continued, his voice dropping to a silken murmur that seemed to caress her skin, "I don't deal in emotions. They're a weakness I cannot afford, a luxury I have no use for. What I require is an heir, someone to carry on the Whitehead legacy. What you require is money. It's a perfect equation." Monica's hands clenched around the portfolio until her knuckles turned white. "And what makes you think I'm the right woman for this transaction?" Barry's eyes swept over her with the clinical precision of a man appraising a piece of art he was considering purchasing. "You're intelligent. Your academic records prove that. You're healthy. My doctors have confirmed it. You're beautiful enough to ensure my child inherits pleasing features, and desperate enough to accept terms that would send most women running." The casual cruelty of his words hit Monica like a physical blow, but she refused to flinch. "How refreshingly honest of you, Mr. Whitehead. Most men at least pretend to see women as human beings." For the first time, something flickered in Barry's arctic gaze. Surprise, perhaps, that she had dared to challenge him. The silence stretched between them like a taut wire, filled with electricity and danger. "Honesty is a rare commodity in my world, Miss Bessel," he said finally, his voice softer but no less dangerous. "I find it refreshing that you appreciate it. Most women who enter my orbit are content to simper and fawn, hoping for scraps of my attention or a place in my bed." "I'm not most women," Monica replied, lifting her chin with a defiance that surprised them both. "No," Barry murmured, his eyes narrowing as he studied her with new interest. "You're not, are you?" He moved even closer until Monica could feel the heat radiating from his body, could see the flecks of silver in his grey eyes, could count the dark lashes that framed them. He was overwhelming in his proximity, a storm contained in human form, beautiful and terrible and utterly mesmerizing. "The terms are non-negotiable," Barry said, his breath warm against her ear. "You will live in my penthouse for the duration of your pregnancy. You will follow every instruction given by my medical team. You will maintain your health, avoid any activities that might endanger the child, and conduct yourself with the discretion befitting someone carrying a Whitehead heir." Monica's heart raced as his words washed over her, each one another link in the golden chain he was forging around her. "And after the birth, the child remains with me. You receive your payment and disappear from our lives permanently." His voice was flat, emotionless, as if they were discussing the weather rather than the fate of a human life. "No contact, no claims, no attempts to insert yourself into our future. You will be nothing more than a beautiful memory that fades with time." The brutality of his words should have sent her running. Instead, Monica found herself studying his face, searching for some crack in his perfect mask. And there, for just an instant, she saw it, a flash of something raw and wounded in his eyes before the ice slammed back into place. "What happened to you?" she whispered, the question escaping before she could stop it. "What turned you into this?" Barry's jaw tightened, and for a moment his carefully constructed facade wavered. "Life, Miss Bessel. Life happened to me, and I learned that emotions are a luxury that weak men indulge in before they're destroyed by them. And you're not weak." "I'm the strongest man you'll ever meet," Barry replied, but something in his voice suggested he was trying to convince himself as much as her. "I built an empire from nothing, crushed my enemies without mercy, and acquired everything I ever wanted through sheer force of will. Weakness died in me 15 years ago, along with everything else that made me human. The pain that flashed across his face lasted only a heartbeat before the mask slammed back into place. But Monica saw it. Beneath the ice and arrogance and cruel beauty, something human still lived, something broken and bleeding and desperately trying to hide. "Sign the contract, Miss Bessel," Barry commanded, his voice returning to its earlier coldness. "And remember, this is business. Nothing more, nothing less. Don't make the mistake of thinking it could ever be anything else." Monica looked down at the papers in her hands, then back up at the man who was offering to save her mother's life in exchange for her own freedom. Barry Whitehead stood before her like a beautiful devil, his grey eyes burning with cold fire, his presence overwhelming and inescapable. As she lifted the pen with trembling fingers, Monica wondered if she was making a deal that would save them all, or damn them beyond redemption. "Welcome to your gilded cage, Miss Bessel," Barry murmured as she signed her name on the dotted line, his voice like silk wrapped around steel. "I do hope you don't come to regret this arrangement." But as Monica looked up into his storm-grey eyes, she saw something that made her breath catch in her throat. For just an instant, his mask had slipped completely, and she glimpsed a man drowning in his own darkness, desperately seeking something he didn't even know he needed. "Maybe, Mr. Whitehead," she whispered, her voice soft but filled with sudden understanding, "you're the one who should be worried about regret." The contract lay between them like a bridge neither was quite ready to cross, signed in ink and sealed with desperate hope. Outside, the storm raged against the windows, but inside, something far more dangerous had just begun. Something that would either destroy them both or save them from the prisons they had built around their hearts. Chapter 2. Walls of Ice. Paradise Lost, it turned out, was a penthouse apartment on the Upper East Side, decorated in shades of perfection and emptiness. Monica stood in the center of Barry Whitehead's living room, her single suitcase looking pathetically small against his overwhelming luxury. Every surface gleamed like polished marble, positioned with mathematical precision, offering commanding views of the conquered city below. It was beautiful, sterile, and utterly without warmth. "Your quarters are down the hall." Barry's voice cut through her observations like a blade. He stood in his study doorway, having traded his charcoal suit for slacks and a white dress shirt rolled up at the sleeves. The casual look only emphasized the predatory grace with which he moved. "Madison will coordinate your care," he continued, gesturing to an elegant blonde woman who appeared instantly. Monica bristled. "I'm perfectly capable of coordinating my own appointments, Mr. Whitehead." Barry's head snapped up, grey eyes flashing dangerously. "You misunderstand your position here, Miss Bessel. You are carrying my heir. Every moment of this pregnancy will be monitored according to my specifications." "I'm not a broodmare," Monica said, her voice rising. Barry moved closer, towering over her like a marble statue carved from ice and shadow. "Aren't you? You signed a contract that places you under my authority for 9 months. You will eat what my nutritionist prescribes, exercise according to my trainer's regimen, and submit to whatever medical examinations my doctors deem necessary." Monica's hands clenched into fists. "I'm a human being with a brain and the ability to make rational decisions about my own body. Your body is currently hosting my child. That makes it my concern, my responsibility, and subject to my judgment." The casual possessiveness made Monica's blood boil. She stepped forward, bringing herself close enough to feel the heat radiating from his frame. "Let me make something clear, Mr. Whitehead. I may have signed your contract, but I am not your property. I never will be. If you think you can intimidate me into being some silent, submissive vessel for your precious heir, you're about to be disappointed." The air crackled with electricity. Barry's eyes darkened to storm clouds, a muscle ticking in his jaw. "You have fire, Miss Bessel. I'll give you that." He leaned closer, his breath warm against her ear. "But fire can be tamed, controlled, directed, and I am very good at getting what I want." Monica's heart hammered, but she refused to back down. "And what is it you want exactly?" Barry pulled back to look into her eyes, and what she saw there made her breath catch. Beneath the ice and arrogance, something hungry and desperate lurked. "I want my child born healthy and strong," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. "I want the Whitehead name to continue. I want—" He trailed off, catching himself. The mask slammed back into place. "It doesn't matter what I want beyond that. You are a means to an end, Miss Bessel. Nothing more." Monica studied his face, searching for cracks in his armor. "Who hurt you? Who turned you into this?" Barry's body went rigid. His grey eyes blazed with fury and something that looked like fear. "No one hurt me," he said through gritted teeth. "I learned that emotions destroy everything you care about. Love is a lie, trust is a fantasy, and hope is for fools." "That's not true," Monica whispered, her heart breaking for the pain behind his anger. "Isn't it? Where has love gotten you? Here, desperate enough to sell your body to a stranger. Where has trust led you? To a contract that makes you my possession." Each word was designed to wound, to make her retreat. But Monica saw through the cruelty to the pain beneath and stepped closer. "You're wrong. Love brought me here because I love my mother enough to sacrifice anything. And hope tells me that somewhere underneath all that ice, there's still a human heart beating." Barry stared at her as if she'd spoken in a foreign language. "You don't know what you're talking about." "Don't I?" Monica reached out, her fingers brushing his cheek soft as butterfly wings. "Then why are your hands shaking?" Barry jerked back from her touch, his breath coming in short gasps. For a moment, his mask slipped completely, and Monica saw him as he really was. Not a cold billionaire, but a man so broken he'd forgotten how to be human. "Don't," he whispered, his voice raw and vulnerable. "Don't try to save me, Monica. I'm already dead inside. Have been for 15 years. "What happened 15 years ago, Barry?" Barry's jaw worked soundlessly, fighting between his need to speak and fear of the cost. When he found his voice, it was hollow, filled with profound grief. "A car accident. I was driving. It was raining. I was angry about something trivial and I lost control. My parents died because of my recklessness, and in that moment I killed every good thing inside myself." Before Monica could respond, Barry turned and walked away. His footsteps echoed like gunshots, and when his study door slammed shut, the sound reverberated through the penthouse like a tomb closing. Monica stood alone in his perfect empty living room, her heart breaking for a man who had convinced himself he was beyond redemption. Outside, the city lights twinkled like fallen stars, beautiful and distant and cold, just like the man who owned them all. Madison cleared her throat delicately. "Miss Bessel, shall I show you to your quarters?" Monica nodded, following the assistant down a hallway lined with priceless art and empty of warmth. But she couldn't stop thinking about the look in Barry's eyes when she'd touched his face, the desperate hunger for connection warring with terror of being hurt again. Whatever had happened 15 years ago had frozen his heart solid, but Monica had felt the tremor in his hands, had seen the cracks forming in his icy armor. Ice was beautiful, she reflected, as Madison showed her to an elegant but lonely bedroom. But it was also fragile, and with enough warmth, even the coldest winter eventually gave way to spring. Chapter 3. Seeds of Change. Dawn came to the Whitehead penthouse like a whispered promise, painting the sky in shades of rose and gold that had no business being so beautiful in a world that felt carved from winter. Monica gripped the marble countertop with white knuckles, her entire body trembling as another wave of nausea crashed over her like a rogue tide. The morning sickness had ambushed her 6 weeks into her pregnancy with the subtlety of a freight train, and despite her best efforts to suffer in silence, she was losing the battle against her rebellious stomach. The pristine kitchen around her mocked her misery with its perfection, every surface gleaming, every appliance precisely placed, every detail screaming of wealth and control. Even in her distress, Monica couldn't help but notice that it looked like a magazine spread rather than a place where anyone actually lived or cooked or found comfort in the simple act of nourishing themselves. "You look like hell." The deep voice, rough with sleep and something else she couldn't identify, made Monica spin around so quickly she had to grab the counter to keep from falling. What she saw nearly stopped her heart entirely. Barry Whitehead stood in the doorway like some dark god who had descended from his throne to walk among mortals. His usually perfect hair was tousled from sleep, falling across his forehead in a way that made him look almost human. He wore nothing but black silk pajama bottoms that hung low on his lean hips, revealing a chest that belonged in a Renaissance sculpture, all carved muscle and smooth skin and masculine perfection that made her mouth go dry despite her nausea. But it was his eyes that truly undid her. Gone was the cold steel she had grown accustomed to, replaced by something warmer, more concerned, more tender. The change was so subtle she might have imagined it, but Monica felt it like sunshine breaking through storm clouds. "Thank you," she managed, her voice hoarse from retching. "That's exactly what every woman wants to hear when she feels like she's dying." Barry moved closer with that predatory grace that seemed as natural to him as breathing. But for the first time since she'd known him, there was nothing threatening about his approach. Instead, he moved like someone trying not to spook a wounded animal. "When did this start?" The question was asked with an intensity that made Monica's heart skip, as if her answer was the most important thing in his world. 3 days ago, she admitted, then immediately cursed herself for the honesty. The last thing she needed was to give him more ammunition for his control over her life. "It's normal. Dr. Anderson said morning sickness is perfectly—" "Dr. Anderson said morning sickness could be a sign of a healthy pregnancy," Barry interrupted, his voice sharp with what sounded suspiciously like worry. "But severe nausea could indicate complications like hyperemesis gravidarum, which can lead to dehydration, electrolyte imbalances, and potential harm to both mother and child." Monica stared at him in shock, her nausea momentarily forgotten in the face of her amazement. "You've been talking to Dr. Anderson." A flush of color crept up Barry's neck, staining his sharp cheekbones with what could only be described as embarrassment. For a moment he looked almost boyish. "I've been researching," he said curtly, but his voice lacked its usual ice. "Extensively." "You've been researching pregnancy?" Monica couldn't hide her astonishment. The idea of the cold, imperious Barry Whitehead poring over pregnancy books and medical journals seemed as likely as him sprouting wings and flying around Manhattan. "I research everything that affects my investments," Barry said, but the words sounded hollow even to his own ears. He cleared his throat and moved closer, his presence overwhelming in the morning light. "Sit down, now." But instead of the harsh command she expected, his voice was gentle, almost pleading. Before Monica could protest, Barry was there, his large hands warm and careful on her shoulders, as he guided her to one of the elegant bar stools that surrounded the kitchen island. His touch was electric, sending shivers through her body that had nothing to do with her illness. "I'll make you something," Barry said, moving toward the refrigerator with surprising purpose and grace. "You cook?" The question escaped before Monica could stop it, her voice filled with genuine disbelief. Barry's mouth quirked in what might have been the first genuine smile she'd ever seen from him. Not predatory or mocking, but almost shy. "I wasn't always a billionaire, Miss Bessel. I learned to take care of myself a long time ago." Monica watched in fascination as Barry moved around his kitchen with the practiced efficiency of someone who actually knew what he was doing. His hands, those same hands that commanded boardrooms and crushed business rivals without mercy, were surprisingly gentle as he cracked eggs into a bowl, whisked them with cream and a pinch of herbs she couldn't identify. "My mother used to make these when I was sick," Barry said quietly, his voice softer than she'd ever heard it. The casual mention of his mother, the woman who had died in whatever tragedy had frozen his heart, made Monica's chest tighten with unexpected emotion. She said they were magic, that they could cure anything from a broken heart to a broken spirit. "She sounds like she was a wonderful woman," Monica said softly, watching as Barry's hands stilled for just a moment at her words. "She was," he replied, his voice barely above a whisper. "She would have loved." He trailed off, shaking his head as if to clear it of dangerous thoughts. "The eggs are almost ready." But Monica had heard what he almost said. She would have loved this baby. The realization sent warmth flooding through her chest, chasing away some of the chill that had settled there since her arrival in his ice palace. Barry plated the scrambled eggs with the precision of a five-star chef, then poured a glass of ginger ale from a bottle that definitely hadn't been in the refrigerator the day before. He set both in front of her with a care that seemed at odds with his usual commanding presence. "Eat," he said, but it wasn't the cold order she'd grown accustomed to. It was almost gentle, worried, as if her well-being actually mattered to him beyond the value of the child she carried. Monica took a tentative bite and nearly moaned with relief. The eggs were perfect, creamy, light, and somehow exactly what her rebellious stomach needed. "These are incredible," she said, taking another bite with more enthusiasm than she'd felt for food in days. Barry's eyes lit up with something that looked unmistakably like pride. "My mother's recipe," he said simply, but Monica caught the way his voice warmed when he spoke of her. As Monica ate, she became acutely aware that Barry was watching her with an intensity that made her skin tingle. Not the cold, calculating stare she was used to, but something warmer, more protective, more possessive, but in a way that felt caring rather than controlling. "Better?" he asked when she'd finished half the plate, and the genuine concern in his voice made her heart skip a beat. "Much," Monica said, and meant it. The nausea had receded to a manageable level, replaced by a strange fluttering in her chest that had everything to do with the way Barry was looking at her. "Thank you. I've ordered some prenatal vitamins that are supposed to help with morning sickness," Barry said, that telltale flush creeping up his neck again. "They'll be delivered this afternoon, along with some herbal teas that are safe during pregnancy and some crackers that women find helpful for settling their stomachs." Monica stared at him, speechless. "You ordered prenatal vitamins? And crackers?" "I told you I research everything," Barry said defensively, but there was something almost vulnerable in his expression. "Barry," Monica said softly, using his first name without thinking. She saw him flinch slightly, as if the sound of his name on her lips affected him physically. "Why do you care so much?" The question hung between them like a bridge neither was quite ready to cross. For a moment, Barry's carefully constructed mask slipped completely, and Monica saw vulnerability in his storm-grey eyes that took her breath away. She saw longing, need, and something that looked almost like... "Because," he said quietly, his voice rough with an emotion he was clearly fighting, "you're carrying the most precious thing in my world." The words were soft, honest, and filled with a tenderness that made Monica's eyes burn with unexpected tears. But almost immediately, Barry seemed to realize what he'd revealed, because his walls slammed back up so quickly it made her dizzy. "Finish your breakfast," he said, his voice returning to its usual commanding tone, but Monica caught the slight tremor in it. "Madison will be here soon to take you to your appointment with Dr. Anderson." He turned to leave, but Monica's voice stopped him at the doorway. "Barry?" He paused, but didn't turn around, his shoulders tense beneath the smooth skin of his back. "Thank you," she said simply. "For the eggs. For caring about the baby. For showing me that you're human." Barry's entire body went rigid at her words. When he finally turned back to look at her, his expression was a war between the ice he wore like armor and the fire that burned beneath it. "Don't mistake necessity for humanity, Monica," he said, using her first name like a caress wrapped in warning. "And don't make the mistake of thinking this changes anything between us." But as he walked away, Monica caught sight of his reflection in the kitchen window. The mask had slipped again, and what she saw there made her heart race with dangerous hope. Barry Whitehead, cold, arrogant, impossible Barry Whitehead, was falling apart. And for the first time since she'd signed his contract, Monica began to wonder if maybe, just maybe, she could put him back together again. The thought should have terrified her. Instead, it filled her with a warmth that had nothing to do with the morning sun streaming through the windows, and everything to do with the man who was trying so hard to pretend he didn't have a heart. But Monica had seen it now. That heart he claimed was dead. She'd felt it in his gentle touch, heard it in his worried questions, tasted it in the eggs he'd made with his mother's love. And once you'd seen someone's heart, Monica reflected as she finished her breakfast, it was impossible to pretend it didn't exist, even if the man who owned it was determined to keep it locked away behind walls of ice that were already beginning to crack. Chapter 4. Shattered Mirrors. Some moments arrive like lightning, brilliant, electric and powerful enough to illuminate the darkness that has consumed your soul for far too long. Monica stood at the top of the grand staircase of the Plaza Hotel, her heart hammering against her ribs as she prepared to descend into a world she had never belonged to. The gown Barry had sent to her room was a masterpiece of midnight blue silk that flowed around her like liquid starlight. The empire waist elegantly concealing her small but visible bump at 12 weeks, while the deep neckline and flowing skirt made her look like a goddess who had descended from the heavens to grace mere mortals with her presence. The annual Children's Hospital Charity Gala glittered below her like a jewel box come to life. Crystal chandeliers cast rainbow prisms across the marble floor, and the sound of chamber music mingled with the gentle symphony of champagne glasses and cultured laughter. Everyone who mattered in New York society had come to see and be seen, to write checks for tax deductions and pose for photographers who would ensure their generosity made the morning papers. "You are absolutely breathtaking." The deep voice, warm with an admiration that sent shivers down her spine, made Monica turn. Barry stood beside her in a perfectly tailored black tuxedo that made him look like he'd stepped from the pages of a fairy tale, the dark prince every woman dreamed of and every man feared to cross. His usually severe features were softened by the golden light, and when he looked at her, Monica felt as if she were the only woman in the world. "You don't look so terrible yourself," Monica managed, her voice slightly breathless from the way his storm-grey eyes were drinking her in. Barry's gaze traveled over her with an intensity that made her skin tingle beneath the silk. "That dress," he said, his voice rough with something that sounded unmistakably like desire, "should be declared a weapon of mass destruction." Before Monica could respond, Barry was offering her his arm with old-world gallantry that seemed as natural to him as breathing. Shall we show them what real power looks like? Together, they descended the staircase, and Monica felt every eye in the room turn to watch their progress. Whispers followed in their wake like autumn leaves, speculation about who she was, what she meant to the notoriously private Barry Whitehead, and why Manhattan's most eligible bachelor was suddenly appearing in public with a mysterious beauty on his arm. But Monica only had eyes for Barry. He moved through the crowd like a king among his subjects, commanding respect and attention with every step. Men stepped aside for him with deferential nods, women gazed at him with undisguised longing, and yet his attention never wavered from the woman beside him. "Barry, darling." The voice was like honey poured over broken glass, sweet on the surface but sharp enough to cut. Monica turned to see a woman approaching them with the predatory grace of a jungle cat, her platinum blonde hair styled to perfection, her red dress cut low enough to be scandalous and tight enough to leave nothing to the imagination. Scarlet Reed. Monica recognized her from the society pages, old money, older grudges, and a reputation for getting whatever she wanted by any means necessary. "Scarlet," Barry said, his voice carefully neutral, but Monica felt his arm tense beneath her fingers. "I wasn't expecting to see you here." "Oh, but darling, you know I never miss the opportunity to support such a worthy cause," Scarlet purred, her pale blue eyes fixed on Barry with an intensity that made Monica's stomach clench with something that felt suspiciously like jealousy. "Besides, I heard the most fascinating rumors about you, and I simply had to see for myself." Scarlet's gaze finally shifted to Monica, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop by several degrees. "And you must be the mysterious woman who's captured our Barry's attention. How quaint." The dismissal in her voice was subtle but unmistakable, designed to make Monica feel small and insignificant. Instead, it only strengthened her resolve to stand her ground. "Monica Bessel," she said, extending her hand with a grace that would have made her mother proud. "And you're Scarlet Reed. Your reputation precedes you." Scarlet's smile was sharp as a blade. "As does yours, my dear. Though I must say, the reality is so much more interesting than the gossip suggested." Barry stepped closer to Monica, his presence protective and possessive in a way that made her pulse race. "Scarlet, if you'll excuse us, Monica and I were just—" "Oh, but Barry, surely you have time for an old friend." Scarlet's voice was pure silk wrapped around steel. "After all, we have so much history together, so many shared memories." The emphasis she placed on the word shared was deliberate, calculated to remind both Barry and Monica of whatever relationship they'd once had. Monica felt something cold and ugly twist in her chest, not jealousy, she told herself firmly, but something far more dangerous. "That was a long time ago," Barry said, his voice flat and emotionless, in a way that somehow managed to convey more than any passionate declaration could have. "Was it?" Scarlet moved closer, her perfume, something expensive and cloying that reminded Monica of funeral flowers, filling the space between them. "Because I remember it like it was yesterday. The way you used to look at me, the things you used to whisper in my ear, the promises you made about our future together." Monica felt Barry's entire body go rigid beside her, watched as his jaw clenched with the effort of maintaining his composure. Whatever history he and Scarlet shared, it was clearly more complicated than a simple romantic entanglement. "People change, Scarlet," Barry said finally, his voice carrying a warning that anyone with half a brain would heed. "Priorities shift. What seemed important yesterday becomes irrelevant today." Scarlet's laugh was like crystal breaking. "Oh, Barry, you always were such a romantic. But tell me, darling, does your new companion know about your little quirks? Your tendency to grow bored with your toys once the novelty wears off?" The casual cruelty of her words hit Monica like a physical blow, but before she could respond, Barry stepped forward with deadly grace. When he spoke, his voice was soft, dangerous, and filled with a cold fury that made Scarlett take an involuntary step backward. "I would be very careful about what you say next, Scarlett," he said, each word carefully enunciated and sharp as a blade. "Monica is not a toy, she's not a novelty, and she's certainly not subject to your petty jealousies or poisonous tongue." The transformation was breathtaking. Gone was the controlled businessman, replaced by something primal and protective that made Monica's heart race with dangerous emotions. This was Barry Whitehead defending her honor, claiming her as his own, and the fierce possessiveness in his voice sent heat flooding through her veins. Scarlett's eyes widened with what might have been surprise or fear. My, she really has gotten her claws into you, hasn't she?" "No," Barry said, his voice soft but filled with a conviction that made Monica's breath catch in her throat. "She's done something far more dangerous than that." "And what's that, darling?" Barry turned to look at Monica, and what she saw in his storm-grey eyes made her heart stop beating entirely. There was tenderness there, and wonder, and something that looked suspiciously like... "She's made me remember what it feels like to be human," he said simply. The words hung in the air between them like a bridge spanning an impossible chasm. Scarlett's face went white with shock and what might have been rage. But Monica barely noticed. All she could see was Barry, looking at her as if she were something precious and rare and worthy of protection. "If you'll excuse us," Barry said, not taking his eyes off Monica, "I'd like to dance with my date." Without waiting for Scarlett's response, he led Monica toward the dance floor, his hand warm and possessive on the small of her back. The orchestra was playing something slow and romantic, and when Barry took her in his arms, Monica felt as if she'd come home to a place she'd never known she was searching for. "I'm sorry about that," Barry murmured as they swayed together, his breath warm against her ear. "Scarlett has a talent for appearing at the worst possible moments." "Old girlfriend?" Monica asked, trying to keep her voice light despite the jealousy still burning in her chest. Barry's arms tightened around her. "Old mistake," he corrected. "One I have no intention of repeating." They danced in comfortable silence for several moments, their bodies moving together with a harmony that seemed as natural as breathing. Monica was acutely aware of everything about him, the warmth of his hand on her back, the subtle scent of his cologne, the way his heart beat strong and steady beneath her palm. "Monica," Barry said finally, his voice rough with an emotion she couldn't quite identify. "Yes?" "What you said to Scarlett about my reputation preceding me, what did you mean?" Monica looked up into his eyes and saw something vulnerable there, something that looked almost like fear. "I meant that everyone in this room knows you're brilliant, powerful, and completely ruthless when it comes to getting what you want." Barry's mouth quirked in a rueful smile. "That's not exactly a flattering assessment." "I wasn't finished," Monica said softly. "They also know you're honorable, even when it costs you. You could have destroyed Scarlett with a few well-chosen words just now, but you didn't. You could have let her make me feel small and insignificant, but instead you protected me. That says more about your character than any business deal ever could." Barry stopped dancing entirely, his hands coming up to frame her face with a tenderness that made her eyes burn with unshed tears. "You see me," he whispered, his voice filled with wonder. "After everything I've done, everything I've become, you still see something worth protecting." "I see everything, Barry," Monica whispered back. "The good and the bad, the light and the darkness, and I'm not afraid of any of it." For a moment, Monica thought he might kiss her right there in front of everyone. His eyes dropped to her lips, and she felt the air between them crackle with electricity. But then the orchestra finished their song, and the spell was broken by the sound of applause. "Come with me," Barry said suddenly, his voice urgent. "I want to show you something." He led her through the crowd and out onto a balcony that overlooked Central Park. The October air was crisp and clean, filled with the scent of autumn leaves and the promise of winter. The city spread out below them like a glittering jewel, beautiful and endless and full of possibilities. "It's gorgeous," Monica breathed, leaning against the stone railing. "Yes," Barry said. But when she turned to look at him, she found him watching her instead of the view. Absolutely gorgeous. The storm that had been threatening all evening finally broke then, sending fat raindrops spattering against the stone balcony. But instead of running for cover, Barry moved closer to Monica, his hands coming up to tangle in her hair. "I should walk away from you," he said, his voice rough with desire and something that sounded like desperation. "I should let you go before I destroy everything good and pure about you." "But you won't," Monica said. Not a question, but a statement filled with absolute certainty. "No," Barry whispered, his forehead coming to rest against hers. "God help me, I can't." And then he was kissing her, and the world exploded into starlight and sensation. His lips were warm and demanding, tasting of champagne and something darker, more dangerous. Monica melted against him, her hands fisting in the lapels of his tuxedo as she kissed him back with all the passion and longing that had been building between them since the moment they met. The kiss was everything, desperate and tender, claiming and surrendering, a promise and a threat wrapped in silk and delivered with the force of a hurricane. When they finally broke apart, both of them were breathing hard, their hearts racing in perfect synchronization. "What are you doing to me?" Barry whispered against her lips, his voice broken and beautiful. "The same thing you're doing to me," Monica whispered back. "Showing me what it feels like to be alive." The rain continued to fall around them, but neither moved to seek shelter. They stood there in the storm, holding each other as if they were the only two people left in the world, both of them knowing that everything had changed in the space of a single kiss. Barry Whitehead, cold, arrogant, impossible Barry Whitehead, was falling in love. And for the first time since her mother's diagnosis, Monica allowed herself to hope that maybe, just maybe, fairy tales could come true after all, even if the prince was more complicated than any story had ever dared to tell. Chapter 5. Storms and Sanctuary. Terror, Monica discovered, had a taste, metallic and sharp, like copper pennies and shattered dreams mixed with the salt of tears that refused to fall. She lay in the pristine white hospital bed, machines beeping around her like mechanical heartbeats, while Dr. Anderson spoke in the careful, measured tones that doctors used when they were trying not to cause panic. The words floated around her like ghosts. Bleeding, complications, threatened miscarriage, each one a dagger thrust into the heart of the fragile hope she'd allowed herself to nurture. "The next 24 hours will be critical," Dr. Anderson was saying, his kind eyes filled with the professional compassion that couldn't quite hide his concern. "We need to monitor both you and the baby closely. Any additional stress could—" He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Monica knew what he meant, knew what hung in the balance like a sword suspended by the thinnest of threads. "Where is he?" Monica whispered, her voice barely audible above the electronic symphony of medical equipment. "Where's Barry?" "Miss Bessel, you need to rest," Dr. Anderson said gently. "Mr. Whitehead is handling the arrangements." "No." The word came out stronger than Monica felt, filled with a desperation that surprised her. "I need him, please." Dr. Anderson exchanged a look with the nurse, then nodded. "I'll have someone find him." But Monica already knew where Barry was. She could feel his presence like a storm on the horizon, all barely contained energy and desperate fury. He was in the hallway, pacing like a caged predator, trying to control the situation through sheer force of will, because that's what Barry Whitehead did. He conquered, he commanded, he bent the world to his desires, except this time the world was refusing to bend. The door burst open with enough force to rattle the frame, and Barry strode in like an avenging angel carved from shadow and starlight. His tuxedo from the gala was wrinkled and stained, his bow tie hanging loose around his neck, his dark hair disheveled from what looked like hours of running his hands through it. But it was his eyes that made Monica's heart clench, wild, desperate, filled with a terror so profound it took her breath away. "Monica!" Her name fell from his lips like a prayer, broken and beautiful and filled with more emotion than she'd ever heard him express. "Christ, Monica, I'm so sorry. This is my fault. I should have—" "Barry, stop!" Monica reached for him, her heart breaking at the self-recrimination in his voice. "This isn't your fault. These things happen. Dr. Anderson said you could lose the baby." Barry's voice was flat, emotionless, but Monica could see the storm raging behind his steel-grey eyes. He said the stress of the evening, the confrontation with Scarlett, the what? Monica interrupted, struggling to sit up despite the IV lines and monitoring wires. "You think this happened because of Scarlett? Because of what she said?" Barry's jaw clenched with the effort of maintaining his composure. "I saw how upset you were. I saw the way her words affected you. I should have protected you from her. Should have what? Wrap me in cotton wool and lock me away from the world?" Monica's voice was gaining strength, fueled by a surge of anger at his misplaced guilt. "I'm pregnant, Barry, not made of glass." "You're bleeding," Barry said simply, and the raw pain in his voice made Monica's heart shatter into 1,000 pieces. "You're lying in a hospital bed, and there's a chance—" He couldn't finish the sentence, couldn't voice the fear that was eating him alive from the inside out. Monica watched as Barry moved to the window, his powerful frame silhouetted against the city lights that twinkled like fallen stars. His hands were clenched into fists at his sides, and she could see the tension in every line of his body, the rigid set of his shoulders, the way he held himself like a man preparing for battle. "I can't lose you," he said finally, his voice so quiet she almost missed it. "I can't lose either of you." The admission hung in the air between them like a bridge spanning an impossible chasm. Monica felt tears prick at her eyes, not from fear or pain, but from the sheer vulnerability in his voice, the way he'd stripped away all his carefully constructed armor to reveal the beating heart beneath. "You're not going to lose us," Monica said, with a conviction she didn't entirely feel. "I'm stronger than I look, and this baby is part of you. Do you really think anything with Whitehead blood running through its veins is going to give up without a fight?" Barry turned from the window, and what Monica saw in his face made her pulse quicken. Gone was the cold, controlled businessman, replaced by a man who looked like he'd been to hell and back. His eyes were red-rimmed with exhaustion and worry, his cheeks were hollow as if he hadn't eaten in days, and his hands shook with the effort of holding himself together. "I don't know how to do this," he confessed, his voice broken and beautiful. "I don't know how to care about someone so much that the thought of losing them makes me want to tear the world apart with my bare hands." "Barry," Monica whispered, her heart breaking for the pain she could see consuming him. "I've spent 15 years convincing myself that I was better off alone," Barry continued, moving closer to her bed with hesitant steps, "that emotions were weakness, that love was a lie, that the only safe way to live was to never let anyone get close enough to hurt me." "What changed?" Monica asked softly, though she thought she already knew the answer. Barry's storm-gray eyes met hers, and what she saw there made her heart race despite the medical equipment surrounding them. "You," he said simply. "You changed everything. You walked into my life with your strength and your compassion, and your refusal to be intimidated by my money or my power or my reputation. You looked at me like I was worth saving, like there was something good buried beneath all the ice and arrogance. There is, Monica said firmly. I've seen it. I've felt it. The way you take care of me, the way you worry about the baby, the way you held me when I was scared, that's not the behavior of a man without a heart. Barry reached the side of her bed, his large hands hovering over hers, as if he was afraid his touch might somehow make things worse. I'm terrified, he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. I'm more scared right now than I've ever been in my entire life, and I don't know what to do with that. You don't have to do anything, Monica said, catching his hands in hers and marveling at how they trembled against her skin. You just have to be here. With me. With us. I don't know how to be what you need, Barry said, his voice rough with unshed tears. I don't know how to be a husband or a father or anything resembling a decent human being. I'm damaged, Monica, broken in ways that might never heal. Then let me help you, Monica said, squeezing his hands with all the strength she could muster. Let me show you that you're not broken, you're just hurt, and hurt things can heal, Barry. With time and patience and love, even the deepest wounds can heal. Barry stared at her as if she'd spoken in a foreign language, his eyes wide with something that looked like wonder. You said love. I did, Monica confirmed, her heart racing as she prepared to take the biggest leap of faith of her life. Because that's what this is, isn't it? This terrifying, overwhelming, impossible thing between us. It's love. I don't know how to love someone, Barry whispered, his voice broken and beautiful. I don't know how to be loved. Then we'll figure it out together, Monica said, pulling his hands to her lips and pressing a soft kiss to his knuckles. We'll make mistakes. We'll hurt each other. We'll probably drive each other crazy. But we'll do it together. Barry's composure finally cracked completely. He sank into the chair beside her bed, his head falling forward until his forehead rested against their joined hands. Monica felt the warmth of his tears against her skin, felt the way his powerful frame shook with the force of emotions he'd kept locked away for far too long. I love you, he whispered against her hands, the words muffled but no less powerful for their quietness. God, help me. I love you so much it terrifies me. Monica's heart soared despite their circumstances, despite the machines and the medical uncertainty and the fear that still gnawed at her edges. I love you too, she whispered back, using her free hand to stroke his dark hair. I love you, and I'm not going anywhere. Neither is our baby. Barry lifted his head, his eyes bright with tears and something that looked like hope. Promise me, he said urgently. Promise me you'll fight. Promise me you won't give up. I promise, Monica said without hesitation, but only if you promise me something in return. Anything, Barry said immediately. I'll give you anything. Promise me you'll stop blaming yourself for things beyond your control, Monica said firmly. Promise me you'll stop punishing yourself for the past and start believing that you deserve to be happy. Barry's jaw worked soundlessly for a moment, as if the words were physically difficult to form. I don't know if I can do that. Then start small, Monica suggested, bringing his hand to rest on her still flat belly. Start with believing that our baby deserves a father who isn't consumed by guilt and self-hatred. Start with believing that I chose you, not your money, not your power, not what you can give me, but you. The man who makes me eggs when I'm sick, who researches pregnancy symptoms because he's worried about me, who stands up to society bitches in ballrooms because he can't stand to see me hurt. Barry's hand was warm against her stomach, and Monica could swear she felt something flutter beneath his palm. Not the baby, not yet. but the possibility of life, of hope, of a future that might be brighter than either of them had dared to imagine. "I want to be better," Barry said finally, his voice filled with a determination that made Monica's heart swell with love. "For you, for our child, for the family we're trying to build, I want to be the man you see when you look at me, even if I can't see him myself yet." "You're already that man," Monica said softly. "You just need to stop being afraid of him." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, Barry's hand resting protectively on her belly, both of them listening to the steady beep of the heart monitor that confirmed life continued to flow through her veins. Outside, the storm that had started at the gala was finally passing, leaving the city washed clean and gleaming beneath the streetlights. "The bleeding has stopped," Dr. Anderson announced when he returned an hour later, his face breaking into the first genuine smile Monica had seen from him all evening. "The baby's heartbeat is strong, and all the tests look good. It appears to have been what we call a threatened miscarriage, scary but not uncommon in the first trimester." Monica felt Barry's entire body sag with relief, felt the tension drain out of him like water from a broken dam. "So they're both going to be okay?" he asked, his voice rough with emotion. "They're both going to be fine," Dr. Anderson confirmed. "But I want Monica to take it easy for the next few weeks. Bed rest, no stress, plenty of fluids and nutritious food. Think of it as a chance to slow down and focus on growing a healthy baby." "Done," Barry said immediately. "Whatever she needs, whatever you recommend, money is no object." Dr. Anderson smiled. "What she needs most is rest and peace of mind. The love and support of her partner will do more for her recovery than any medical intervention." After the doctor left, Barry helped Monica get comfortable in the bed, his movements gentle and careful, as he arranged her pillows and made sure she had everything she needed. When he started to move away, Monica caught his hand. "Stay," she said simply. "Please." Barry looked uncertain. "The chairs aren't exactly built for comfort, and you need your rest." "I need you," Monica interrupted. "I need to know you're here, that you're not going to disappear back behind those walls you've built around yourself." Barry's expression softened, and he kicked off his shoes before carefully climbing into the narrow hospital bed beside her. Monica curled against his side, her head resting on his chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heart beneath her ear. "I'm not going anywhere," Barry murmured into her hair, his arms tightening around her protectively. "Not tonight, not tomorrow, not ever. You're stuck with me, Monica Bessel." "Good," Monica whispered, already feeling sleep tugging at her consciousness, "because I plan to spend a very long time showing you just how worthy of love you really are." As she drifted off to sleep in the circle of Barry's arms, Monica felt something she hadn't experienced in months: perfect peace. They had weathered their first real storm together, and instead of being torn apart by it, they had found shelter in each other. And sometimes, Monica thought drowsily, that was all you needed to believe in happily ever after, someone willing to hold you through the darkness and remind you that dawn always came, no matter how long the night seemed to last. Chapter 6. Blooming Hearts. Love, Monica discovered, was not the gentle flutter of butterfly wings she had read about in romance novels. It was a force of nature, wild and consuming and powerful enough to transform even the most barren wastelands into gardens of impossible beauty. 3 weeks had passed since the hospital scare, and Barry Whitehead had become a man she barely recognized. Gone was the cold, calculating billionaire who had offered her a contract like a business transaction. In his place was someone tender, protective, and so devoted to her well-being that it sometimes took her breath away. Monica lay in the center of their bed. When had she started thinking of it as their bed? Watching the early morning light paint golden patterns across Barry's sleeping face. Even in sleep, he looked younger, more peaceful, the harsh lines of worry and control smoothed away by dreams she hoped were filled with happiness rather than the nightmares that had plagued him for so long. Her hand drifted to her belly, which had begun to show the gentle curve of new life. At 20 weeks, she was well into her second trimester, and their baby was growing strong and healthy. But more than that, their love was growing too, carefully, tentatively, like a flower pushing through concrete to reach the sun. "Good morning, beautiful." Barry's voice was rough with sleep and something warmer, more intimate. Monica turned to find him watching her with storm-grey eyes that were soft with affection, his dark hair tousled in a way that made her want to run her fingers through it. "Good morning yourself," she murmured, shifting closer to him until she could feel the warmth of his skin against hers. "How did you sleep?" "Better than I have in 15 years, Barry admitted, his arm coming around her to pull her against his side. "You have that effect on me." Monica smiled, pressing a soft kiss to his chest. "What's on your agenda today, Mr. Whitehead?" "Taking care of you," Barry said immediately, his voice filled with the kind of certainty that had once been reserved for business deals and hostile takeovers. "Dr. Anderson said, you need to stay off your feet, so I've cleared my schedule." "Barry, you can't keep cancelling meetings because of me," Monica protested, though her heart warmed at his dedication. "I'm fine. The baby's fine. You don't need to hover." "I'm not hovering," Barry said, but the defensive note in his voice suggested otherwise. "I'm being attentive." Monica laughed, the sound bright and musical in the morning quiet. "You rearranged your entire office so you could work from home. You hired a chef to make sure I'm eating properly. You read 3 pregnancy books in one day. That's not attentive, that's obsessive." "I prefer thorough," Barry replied, but his mouth quirked in a smile that made Monica's heart skip a beat. "Besides, I have an investment to protect." "Is that what I am? An investment?" Barry's expression grew serious, and he rolled onto his side to face her fully. "You're everything," he said simply, his voice rough with emotion. "You're my heart, my future, my reason for getting up in the morning. You're the mother of my child and the woman I love more than I ever thought possible." The words hit Monica like a physical blow, stealing her breath with their honesty and intensity. Even after weeks of increasing intimacy, Barry's declarations of love still had the power to make her feel like she was flying. "I love you too," she whispered, reaching up to cup his face in her hands. "Sometimes I think I might love you too much." "There's no such thing," Barry said, turning his head to press a kiss to her palm. "Not when it comes to us." They lay in comfortable silence for a while, wrapped in each other's arms and the golden morning light. Monica marveled at how different Barry was from the man who had offered her a contract in his sterile office. This Barry was warm, tender, protective without being controlling. He touched her like she was made of spun glass and dreams, and he looked at her like she was the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen. "I have something for you," Barry said suddenly, his voice filled with barely contained excitement. "Barry, you don't need to keep buying me things," Monica protested, though she couldn't hide her curiosity. "The jewelry, the clothes, the books, it's too much." "This is different," Barry said, already climbing out of bed with the energy of a man on a mission. "This is, well, you'll see." Monica watched as he disappeared into his walk-in closet, emerging moments later with a small wrapped package that looked almost humble compared to the expensive gifts he'd been showering her with. Her heart fluttered with anticipation as he handed it to her, his eyes bright with nervous excitement. "Open it," he urged, settling back onto the bed beside her. Monica carefully unwrapped the package, her breath catching when she saw what lay inside. It was a small, leather-bound journal, worn and well-loved, with a faded inscription on the cover that read, "For all the dreams yet to come." "It was my mother's," Barry said softly, his voice thick with emotion. She kept it during her pregnancy with me, writing down her hopes and fears and dreams for the future. I thought maybe you'd like to do the same for our baby." Monica's eyes filled with tears as she opened the journal and saw pages filled with elegant handwriting, sketches of baby clothes and nursery designs, and pressed flowers that had somehow retained their delicate beauty despite the passage of time. "Barry, this is—" She couldn't finish the sentence, too overwhelmed by the magnitude of what he was giving her. This wasn't just a gift. It was a piece of his heart, a connection to the mother who had loved him before tragedy stole her away. "I know it's not diamonds or designer clothes," Barry said, suddenly uncertain. "But I thought—" "It's perfect," Monica interrupted, looking up at him with eyes that shone with love and gratitude. "It's the most beautiful gift anyone has ever given me." Barry's face lit up with relief and joy, and he leaned down to kiss her with a tenderness that made her heart race. "I want our child to know about her grandmother," he said against her lips. "I want them to know that they come from a line of strong, loving women who believed in the power of dreams." "Her grandmother?" Monica asked, pulling back to look at him with raised eyebrows. Barry's cheeks flushed with color. "I may have had an ultrasound done while you were napping yesterday. Dr. Anderson confirmed what I've been suspecting. We're having a daughter." Monica's heart soared with joy and something that might have been exasperation. "You had an ultrasound without me?" "I couldn't wait," Barry admitted, looking like a little boy who'd been caught with his hand in the cookie jar. "I needed to know she was okay, that she was growing properly. And when I saw her on the screen, Monica, she's perfect. She has your nose and what looks like my stubborn chin." Monica couldn't help but laugh at his enthusiasm, even as she shook her head in amused disbelief. "You're impossible." "I'm in love," Barry corrected, his voice soft and wondering. "With you, with our daughter, with the family we're building together. I never thought I could feel this way about anyone. And now I can't imagine my life without you in it." "Good," Monica said, settling back against the pillows with the journal clutched to her chest. "Because you're stuck with us, Barry Whitehead. For better or worse, in sickness and in health, through morning sickness and midnight cravings and everything else that comes with loving someone this much." Barry's eyes darkened with an emotion that made Monica's pulse race. "Is that a proposal, Miss Bessel?" "Maybe," Monica said, her voice teasing but her heart serious. "Would you say yes if it was?" "I'd say yes to anything you asked of me," Barry replied, his voice rough with sincerity. "I'd give you the world if you wanted it, but all I really want is to spend the rest of my life proving that I'm worthy of your love." "You already are," Monica said softly, reaching out to touch his face. "You were worthy the moment you chose to let me see the real you, not the mask you show the world." Barry caught her hand and pressed it firmly against his cheek, his eyes closing as if he were trying to memorize the feeling of her touch. "I still don't understand how you can love me," he admitted, "how you can look at all my flaws and mistakes and still choose to stay." "Because your flaws don't define you," Monica said firmly. "Your capacity for love defines you, your willingness to change, to grow, to be better than you were yesterday. That's what makes you the man I fell in love with." Barry opened his eyes and looked at her with such intensity that Monica felt her breath catch. "I want to marry you," he said suddenly, his voice filled with desperate urgency. "Not because of the contract, not because of the baby, but because I can't imagine spending another day without knowing that you're mine forever." "I'm already yours," Monica said, her heart racing with joy and love and the overwhelming rightness of this moment. "Contract or no contract, baby or no baby, I'm yours, Barry. Completely and utterly yours." "Then marry me," Barry said, rolling onto his knees beside her and taking her hands in his. Marry me because you love me, because I love you, because what we have is too precious to risk losing. Marry me because I want to spend the rest of my life waking up beside you and falling asleep in your arms." Monica looked into his storm-grey eyes and saw her future reflected there. A future filled with love and laughter and the kind of happiness she'd never dared dream possible. "Yes," she whispered, her voice thick with tears of joy. "Yes, I'll marry you." Barry's face lit up with a smile so bright it could have powered the entire city, and he leaned down to kiss her with a passion that spoke of forever and always, and dreams finally coming true. When they finally broke apart, both of them were breathing hard and laughing through their tears. "I love you, Monica Bessel," Barry said, his forehead resting against hers. "I love you more than I ever thought possible, and I'm going to spend the rest of my life proving it to you." "I love you too, Barry Whitehead," Monica replied, her heart so full she thought it might burst. "And I can't wait to see what kind of father you're going to be to our daughter." Barry's hand moved to her belly, his touch gentle and reverent. "I'm going to love her the way I should have been loved," he said softly. "The way you've taught me to love. With everything I have, everything I am." "She's going to be so lucky to have you as a father," Monica said, covering his hand with hers. "And I'm so lucky to have you as my husband." "Future husband," Barry corrected with a grin, "though if you're willing, I'd like to change that as soon as possible." Monica laughed, the sound bright and beautiful in the morning light. "Are you in a hurry, Mr. Whitehead?" "I've waited 35 years to find you," Barry said, his voice soft and serious. "I don't want to waste another moment." As they lay together in the golden morning light, talking about wedding plans and baby names and the beautiful future stretching out before them, Monica marveled at how much their lives had changed. What had started as a cold business transaction had become the greatest love story she'd ever known, and the best part was, it was only the beginning. Chapter 7. Dangerous Revelations. Fury hath no bounds like a billionaire whose family is under siege. Monica stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of Barry's penthouse, watching the city come alive, her hand protecting the gentle swell of her belly. At 24 weeks pregnant, she was showing in a way that made Barry's gaze light up with wonder every time he looked at her. Their engagement had been announced 2 weeks ago, and the response had been mixed. "The Times wants a comment about the engagement," Madison said, sorting through correspondence. "So does the Post, the Journal, and 15 other publications." "Tell them all the same thing," Barry said without looking up from his laptop. "No comment. Our personal life is not open for public consumption." Monica turned to study her fiancé's face. She could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his jaw clenched as he read. "What is it?" she asked, moving behind his chair. "What's wrong?" Barry's muscles tensed. When he looked up, his grey eyes were dark with fury. "It's nothing you need to worry about." "Barry," Monica said firmly, "tell me." Barry closed his laptop with force and stood. "Hunter Brooks is making his move. He's been investigating our relationship, digging into your past, looking for anything he can use to destroy me." Monica's blood ran cold. Hunter Brooks, Barry's oldest rival, the man who had been trying to destroy Whitehead Industries for years. "What kind of things? Your mother's medical bills? Your father's gambling debts? The fact that you were desperate enough to sign a contract with a stranger to solve your financial problems?" Each word was like a physical blow, but instead of shrinking away, Monica lifted her chin with dignity. "And what does he think he can do with that information? He's threatening to go public, to paint you as a gold digger who trapped me with a pregnancy, me as a fool who was manipulated." Monica felt something cold twist in her stomach. Would people believe that? Some would, There are plenty of people who would love to see me brought down. But you know it's not true. You know what we have is real. Of course I know that, Barry said fiercely, his hands framing her face. But that doesn't matter if Brooks destroys your reputation in the process. What does he want? My resignation from Whitehead Industries. He wants me to step down, to hand over control of the company my father built. And if you don't, he destroys us both. Your reputation, your privacy, your ability to live a normal life, all gone. And our daughter will grow up with this hanging over her head. Monica felt tears prick her eyes, but not from self-pity. She was crying for the impossible choice he was being forced to make. There has to be another way. You can't let him win. Can't I? Barry asked, his voice soft but determined. If the choice is between my company and your happiness, between my reputation and our daughter's future, then there's no choice at all. Barry, no, Monica said, grabbing his hands. You are not giving up everything you've worked for because of me. You're not making the decision. I am. And I choose you, Monica. I choose our family. I choose love over power, happiness over wealth. Monica stared at him in amazement. This was not the cold businessman she had first met. This was a man transformed by love. What if we fight back? What if we don't give him what he wants? Barry's eyes darkened with something that might have been hope. Monica, you don't understand. If we fight, it's going to get ugly. Brooks doesn't fight fair. Neither do you, Monica pointed out, a fierce smile crossing her face. You're Barry Whitehead. You built an empire from nothing. You've crushed every enemy who's tried to destroy you. Why should Hunter Brooks be different? Barry stared at her as if seeing her for the first time. Because this time, I have something to lose. I have you and our daughter, and a future that matters more than any business deal. Then we fight for that future, Monica said firmly. We fight for our family, for our love, for our right to be happy. And we win because we have something Hunter Brooks will never have. What's that? Each other, Monica said simply. We have each other, and that makes us stronger than any enemy. Barry's face lit up with the smile that had become Monica's favorite sight. Are you sure? Because once we start this fight, there's no going back. I'm sure, Monica said without hesitation. I didn't fall in love with you because you were safe. I fell in love with you because you're strong, because you fight for what matters. And I fell in love with you because you see the best in me, Barry said, pulling her into his arms. Because you make me want to be better than I ever thought I could be. They stood in the morning light, holding each other and drawing strength from their love. Outside, the city hummed with energy, unaware that a war was brewing above. So, what's our first move? Monica asked, looking up with eyes that sparkled with determination. Barry's smile was sharp as a blade. We give the media what they want. We tell our story, on our terms, before Brooks has a chance to twist it. And if he still tries to destroy us. Barry's expression grew cold, and Monica caught a glimpse of the man who had earned his reputation as one of the most ruthless businessmen in the city. Then I remind him why it's a mistake to go to war with a Whitehead. I've been playing nice for too long, but if he wants to threaten my family, he's about to learn there are consequences. Monica felt a shiver at the quiet menace in his voice. This was the Barry Whitehead that his enemies feared, but instead of being frightened, she felt safer than she ever had. I love you, she said simply, standing on her toes to kiss him, and I'm proud to be fighting beside you. I love you too, Barry replied, his voice warm with affection and fierce with determination. And I promise you, Monica, no one is going to hurt our family. We're going to win this war, and we're going to do it together. As they held each other in the golden light, Monica felt confidence surge through her. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them as a team, and together they were unstoppable. The war for their happiness was about to begin, but Monica had no doubt about the outcome. Love was the most powerful force in the universe, and theirs was strong enough to conquer anything. Chapter 8. Ashes to Beauty. Sometimes the most beautiful moments are born from the ashes of our deepest fears, rising like phoenixes to remind us that love can conquer even the darkest storms. Monica gripped Barry's hand as they walked through the gauntlet of reporters and photographers gathered outside the Manhattan Medical Center, their voices creating a cacophony of questions and accusations that felt like physical blows. The exclusive interview they'd given to Diane Sawyer had aired 3 nights before, and the response had been explosive, some calling them brave for telling their truth, others condemning them as publicity seekers trying to manipulate public opinion. "Mrs. Whitehead, is it true you signed a contract to have Barry's baby for money? Mr. Whitehead, how do you respond to allegations that you're being manipulated? Monica, are you worried about raising a child in the spotlight?" Barry's arm tightened around her protectively, his body shielding her from the worst of the crowd as their security team cleared a path to the entrance. At 32 weeks pregnant, Monica moved more slowly than she would have liked, her body heavy with their daughter and the weight of public scrutiny. "Just keep walking," Barry murmured in her ear, his voice steady despite the chaos around them. "Dr. Anderson is waiting, and after this appointment we're going home to our daughter's nursery, where none of this matters." Monica nodded, focusing on the warmth of his hand in hers and the steady rhythm of his breathing. The nursery. They had spent weeks creating the perfect space for their baby girl, painting walls in soft lavender and filling the room with stuffed animals and picture books and all the love 2 people could possibly contain. "Mr. Whitehead," the voice cut through the crowd like a blade, and Monica felt Barry's entire body tense beside her. She looked up to see Hunter Brooks emerging from a black town car, his silver hair gleaming in the afternoon sun, his smile sharp as a predator's. "Hunter," Barry said, his voice flat and dangerous. "I wasn't expecting to see you here." "Oh, I wouldn't miss this for the world," Hunter replied, his pale blue eyes glittering with malice. "After all, it's not every day I get to watch a king fall from grace so spectacularly." Monica felt something cold and ugly twist in her stomach. This man, this stranger who had never met her, never spoken to her, was trying to destroy her family for reasons she couldn't even comprehend. "You're wasting your time, Brooks," Barry said quietly, but there was steel in his voice that made several reporters take a step back. The interview aired. People know the truth now. "Do they?" Hunter's laugh was like ice cracking, because from what I saw, it looked like a very polished performance. A beautiful woman playing the victim, a powerful man claiming to be reformed by love. Very romantic, very touching. But the public isn't stupid, Barry. They know a con when they see one. "You're wrong," Monica said suddenly, her voice cutting through the noise of the crowd like a bell. Every camera turned toward her, every microphone swiveled in her direction, but she only had eyes for the man who was trying to destroy everything she held dear. "Am I?" Hunter's smile widened. "Tell me, my dear, how does it feel to know that everyone in this city is wondering if you trapped one of its most eligible bachelors with a pregnancy? How does it feel to know that your daughter will grow up with people questioning whether her parents actually love each other?" The words hit Monica like physical blows, each one designed to wound, to make her crumble under the weight of public scrutiny. But instead of backing down, she stepped forward, her hand protectively covering her belly. "You want to know how it feels?" she asked, her voice strong and clear despite the tears threatening to spill over. It feels like watching someone so empty, so bitter, so incapable of love that he can't believe it exists in others. You look at what Barry and I have and you can't understand it because you've never felt it yourself." Hunter's smile faltered slightly, but he pressed on. "How touching. But love doesn't explain why you signed a contract for $5 million, does it?" "No," Monica said, lifting her chin with the kind of dignity that made Barry's heart swell with pride. "What explains that is desperation. My mother was dying and I would have done anything to save her. But what you can't understand, what you'll never understand, is that sometimes the most desperate choices lead to the most beautiful discoveries." She turned to look at Barry, and the love shining in her eyes was so pure, so genuine, that several of the reporters actually lowered their cameras. "I signed that contract thinking I was selling 9 months of my life to a stranger," Monica continued, her voice growing stronger with each word. "What I discovered was that I was finding my home, my heart, my future. Barry didn't have to love me. The contract didn't require it. He didn't have to propose marriage. That wasn't part of our agreement. He chose to, because what we found together was real." "Pretty words," Hunter said, but his voice lacked its earlier conviction. "But how do we know? Because I'm choosing to give up everything that once mattered to me for them." Barry's voice cut through Hunter's words like a sword through silk. He stepped forward, his presence commanding the attention of every person in the crowd. "You want to destroy me, Hunter? You want to take my company, my reputation, my legacy?" Barry's smile was sharp as a blade. "Then congratulations. You win. I'm announcing my resignation from the board of Whitehead Industries, effective immediately." The crowd erupted in shocked murmurs and shouted questions, but Barry held up a hand for silence. "I'm stepping down because I've learned something in the past few months that you'll never understand," he continued, his eyes finding Monica's. "I've learned that there are things more valuable than money, more precious than power, more important than winning. I've learned that love isn't a weakness. It's the greatest strength a man can possess." "Barry, no," Monica whispered, reaching for him, but he caught her hands and brought them to his lips. "I choose them," Barry said, his voice carrying across the stunned crowd. "I choose my wife, my daughter, my family over everything else, because a company can be rebuilt, money can be earned again, but love like this is once in a lifetime." Hunter's face had gone white with shock. "You're giving up everything. For her." "I'm not giving up anything," Barry replied, his arms sliding around Monica's waist. "I'm gaining everything that matters." Before Hunter could respond, Monica gasped, her hand flying to her belly as pain lanced through her body. "Barry," she whispered, fear coloring her voice. "Something's wrong." The crowd seemed to sense that something had shifted, the aggressive energy of the media scrum transforming into something more urgent, more human. Barry's face went white as he looked down at Monica, seeing the pain in her eyes and the way she was struggling to stay upright. "Get Dr. Anderson," he barked to their security team. "Now!" "I think." Monica's voice was strained, and when she looked down, Barry followed her gaze to see fluid pooling at her feet. "I think my water just broke." The world seemed to slow down as the implications hit everyone at once. Monica was in labor 2 months early, in the middle of a media circus outside a hospital. Barry's protective instincts kicked in with the force of a hurricane. "Clear a path," he roared, scooping Monica into his arms despite her protests. "Everyone out of the way, now!" The crowd parted like the Red Sea as Barry carried his wife toward the hospital entrance, his face a mask of determination and terror. Behind them, the reporters followed like a pack of wolves, but Barry didn't care about anything except getting Monica to safety. "It's going to be okay," he murmured in her ear as they burst through the hospital doors. "You're going to be okay. Our daughter is going to be okay. Promise me." Monica gasped, another contraction hitting her with enough force to make her cry out. "Promise me she'll be safe." "I promise," Barry said fiercely, his voice breaking with emotion. "I promise you both." Hours later, after the chaos and the fear and the desperate prayers to any god who might be listening, Barry sat beside Monica's hospital bed, their daughter sleeping peacefully in his arms. She was small, so impossibly small, but perfect in every way that mattered. Her tiny fingers were wrapped around his thumb, and her dark hair was already showing signs of Monica's curl. "She's beautiful," Monica whispered, her voice hoarse from labor but glowing with joy. "She's absolutely perfect." "Just like her mother," Barry said, leaning down to kiss Monica's forehead. "I'm so proud of you. You were incredible out there, standing up to Hunter, defending our family." Monica smiled weakly. "We defended our family, together." "Together," Barry agreed, looking down at his daughter with wonder. "Speaking of which, I think someone wants to meet her Uncle Cole." Monica followed his gaze to see a man standing in the doorway. Tall, dark-haired, with Barry's grey eyes and a face that was both familiar and strange. Cole Whitehead, Barry's younger brother, the man who had been estranged from his family for 5 years. "I saw the news," Cole said quietly, stepping into the room with careful movements. "I saw what you did out there, what you said about family being more important than business, and I thought, maybe it was time I came home." Barry's eyes filled with tears as he looked at his brother, then down at his daughter, then back at Monica. "Welcome home," he said simply. As the three adults looked down at the sleeping baby, Monica felt a peace settle over her that had nothing to do with the painkillers and everything to do with the love surrounding them. Outside, the media storm was still raging. Hunter Brooks was probably planning his next move. The future was uncertain in a dozen different ways, but none of that mattered. What mattered was this moment, this family, this love that had been born from ashes and grown into something beautiful beyond imagination. "What should we call her?" Monica asked softly. Barry looked down at his daughter, at the miracle he never thought he'd be blessed enough to hold. "Hope," he said simply. "Her name is Hope." And as their daughter opened her eyes for the first time, looking up at her parents with Barry's storm-grey gaze, Monica knew that name was perfect. Because hope was exactly what this little girl represented. Hope for their future, hope for their family, hope that love really could conquer all. Even when the whole world was watching. Chapter 9. Phoenix Rising. Miracles, Monica discovered, came in many forms. Sometimes as tiny fingers wrapped around your thumb, sometimes as the man you love choosing you over everything else he once valued, and sometimes as the courage to build a new life from the ashes of the old. 4 months had passed since Hope's dramatic entrance into the world, and the spacious apartment above Monica's art restoration studio had become a sanctuary filled with the gentle sounds of family life. Baby bottles and business plans shared space on the kitchen counter, and the walls were covered with architectural drawings for the new Whitehead Foundation headquarters alongside Hope's ultrasound photos. Monica sat in the rocking chair Barry had bought during one of his many quick trips to the baby store, watching him pace the small living room with their daughter in his arms. Hope had been fussy all evening, and Barry had taken over daddy duty with the kind of gentle patience that still took Monica's breath away. "She's just overtired," he murmured, his voice soft as silk as he swayed back and forth. "It's been a big day, hasn't it, sweetheart? Daddy had meetings all morning, and then Uncle Cole came by with more presents you don't need, and then that photographer from the magazine wanted to take your picture. You know she can't understand you, right?" Monica said with a smile, watching the way Barry's entire face softened when he looked at their daughter. "She understands everything," Barry replied seriously, pressing a gentle kiss to Hope's forehead. "Don't you, baby girl?" You understand that Daddy loves you more than all the stars in the sky, and that he's going to spend his whole life making sure you're happy and safe and loved." Monica's heart swelled with emotion as she watched the man who had once been too afraid to feel anything become the most devoted father she'd ever seen. Barry had thrown himself into parenthood with the same intensity he'd once reserved for business deals, reading every book on child development, baby-proofing their apartment with military precision, and talking to Hope as if she were the most fascinating person in the world. "Any word from the foundation board?" Monica asked, knowing that Barry was nervous about the meeting scheduled for the next morning. "They're ready to move forward," Barry said, his voice filled with excitement and pride. "The Children's Medical Research Foundation will be operational within 6 months. We'll be funding pediatric cancer research, supporting families with medical expenses, and providing grants for innovative treatments." Monica smiled, watching her husband's face light up as he talked about his new venture. After resigning from Whitehead Industries, Barry had used his personal fortune to start a foundation dedicated to helping families facing the same medical crises that had once driven her to desperation. It was meaningful work that fed his soul in a way that corporate mergers never had. "And the gallery space?" Monica asked, referring to the art restoration workshop Barry was helping her open. "Construction starts next month," Barry said, shifting Hope to his shoulder with practiced ease. "By spring, you'll have the most beautiful art restoration workshop in the city, complete with state-of-the-art equipment and enough space for those classes you want to teach." Monica felt tears prick at her eyes. When she'd first signed Barry's contract, she'd been focused on survival, on getting through each day without losing everything she held dear. She'd never imagined that the cold, arrogant man who'd offered her $5 million would become her greatest champion, supporting her dreams and helping her build the life she'd always wanted. "I still can't believe you gave up your company for us," Monica said softly, the words carrying the weight of everything she felt but couldn't always express. Barry stopped pacing and turned to look at her, his storm-grey eyes warm with love and absolute certainty. "I didn't give up anything," he said firmly. "I chose everything that mattered. I chose you. I chose Hope. I chose the family we've built together. Whitehead Industries was my father's dream. But you're mine." Before Monica could respond, there was a soft knock at the door. Barry frowned, checking his watch. "It's past 9. Who could that be?" Monica rose from the rocking chair, smoothing down her dress as she moved to answer the door. When she opened it, she found Cole Whitehead standing in the hallway, his usually composed expression replaced by something that looked like nervous excitement. "Cole," Monica said, stepping aside to let him enter. "This is a surprise. Is everything okay?" "More than okay," Cole said, his eyes immediately going to his brother and niece. "I have news. Good news." Barry raised an eyebrow, unconsciously swaying to keep Hope content. "What kind of news?" Cole's smile was brilliant. "The kind that involves Hunter Brooks finally getting what he deserves." Monica felt her breath catch. Hunter Brooks, the man who had tried to destroy their family, who had forced Barry to choose between his company and his happiness. She hadn't heard his name in weeks, but the mere mention of it still made her stomach clench with remembered fear. "What happened?" Barry asked, his voice carefully neutral. "The SEC finished their investigation," Cole said, his satisfaction evident. "Turns out Brooks has been engaged in some very creative accounting practices. Embezzlement, securities fraud, insider trading, the works. He's looking at 20 years in federal prison." Monica sank back into the rocking chair, relief flooding through her like a tide. "It's over," she whispered. "It's really over." "There's more," Cole continued, his grin widening. "The Whitehead Industries board wants you back, Barry. They're offering you full control, complete autonomy, and a formal apology for doubting your leadership." Barry was quiet for a long moment, his attention focused on Hope, who had finally fallen asleep in his arms. When he looked up, his expression was thoughtful but not surprised. "That's flattering," he said finally, "but I'm not interested." Cole's smile faltered. "What do you mean, you're not interested? This is everything you worked for, everything Dad built. You could have it all back." "I already have it all," Barry said simply, looking at Monica with eyes that held the universe. "I have a wife who loves me, a daughter who's the light of my life, and work that actually matters. Why would I want to go back to a world where success is measured by how much you can take from others instead of how much you can give?" Monica felt her heart swell with love and pride. This was the man she'd married, not the cold billionaire who'd offered her a contract, but the warm, compassionate father who'd found his true calling in helping others. "Besides," Barry continued, moving to sit on the arm of Monica's chair, "someone needs to keep an eye on the foundation. We're planning to expand internationally within the next 5 years, and I have a feeling that's going to keep me plenty busy." Cole shook his head in amazement. "You're really not going back?" "No," Barry said without hesitation. "I'm not going back because I'm not the same man who built that company. I'm better now. I'm whole. And I owe that to the woman who saw something worth saving in me when I couldn't see it myself." Monica reached up to touch his face, marveling at how completely he'd transformed. "You saved yourself," she said softly. "You chose to change, chose to let love in, chose to become the man you were always meant to be." "We saved each other," Barry corrected, leaning down to kiss her forehead. "And we created something beautiful in the process." As if summoned by their words, Hope stirred in Barry's arms, her tiny fist stretching up toward his face. Without thinking, Barry lowered his head so she could grab his nose, and the sight of his powerful hands cradling their daughter's tiny form made Monica's eyes fill with tears. "She's going to be so proud of you when she's older," Monica said, her voice thick with emotion. "She's going to know that her father chose love over power, family over fortune, and doing what's right over doing what's easy. She's going to know that her mother is the strongest woman who ever lived," Barry replied, his voice warm with admiration. "She's going to know that love is the most powerful force in the universe, and that it's worth fighting for, worth sacrificing for, worth believing in, even when the whole world tells you it's impossible." Cole cleared his throat, reminding them of his presence. "So what do I tell the board?" he asked, his voice filled with affection and respect for his brother's choice. "Tell them to find someone who actually wants the job," Barry said with a grin. "Someone who thinks corporate profits are more important than human happiness. I hear there are plenty of those around." "And tell them," Monica added, her voice filled with gentle steel, "that the Whitehead name will continue to mean something in this city, just not in the way they expect." As Cole prepared to leave, he paused at the door and looked back at his brother. "I'm proud of you," he said simply. "Dad would be too. He always said the measure of a man wasn't what he could build, but what he could love." After Cole left, Barry and Monica sat in comfortable silence, Hope sleeping peacefully between them. The apartment was quiet except for the gentle hum of the city outside and the steady rhythm of their daughter's breathing. "Any regrets?" Monica asked softly, knowing that Barry had given up more than most people could imagine. "Only one," Barry said, his voice thoughtful. Monica's heart clenched with sudden worry. "What?" Barry's smile was tender as he looked at her. "I regret that it took me so long to find you. I regret all the years I spent thinking that success meant being alone, that strength meant not needing anyone, that love was a weakness instead of the greatest gift a person could receive." Monica felt tears stream down her cheeks as she leaned into his warmth. "We found each other exactly when we were supposed to," she said softly. any sooner, and we might not have been ready for what we have now." "What we have now," Barry repeated, his voice filled with wonder. "A daughter who's going to change the world, a love that's strong enough to withstand any storm, and a future that's brighter than anything I ever dared dream." "And it's just the beginning," Monica added, thinking of all the plans they'd made, all the dreams they'd shared during late-night conversations, while hope slept between them. "The beginning," Barry agreed, pressing a kiss to her temple. "I love you, Monica Whitehead. I love our daughter. I love our life. I love the family we've built from the ashes of who we used to be." "I love you too," Monica whispered, her heart so full she thought it might burst. "Forever and always, through everything life throws at us." As they sat together in their small apartment, surrounded by the evidence of their simple but beautiful life, Monica marveled at how far they'd come. From a cold business contract to a love that had transformed them both, from strangers to soulmates, from two broken people to a family that was whole and happy and complete. Outside, the city hummed with ambition and greed and the endless pursuit of more. But inside their sanctuary, Barry and Monica had found something more valuable than any fortune, more precious than any power, more lasting than any earthly success. They had found each other, and in doing so, they had found themselves. The phoenix had risen from the ashes, and it was beautiful beyond words. Chapter 10. Forever Reborn. Some love stories end with a kiss, but the greatest ones begin with a promise that echoes through eternity, transforming not just two hearts, but everyone who witnesses the miracle of souls finding their way home to each other. Monica stood before the full-length mirror in the bridal suite of the Plaza Hotel, her reflection showing a woman transformed by love and motherhood into something radiant and luminous. The wedding dress Barry had chosen for her was a masterpiece of ivory silk and delicate lace, designed to flatter her figure 6 months after giving birth, while making her feel like the goddess he saw when he looked at her. Her dark hair was swept up in an elegant chignon, adorned with the pearl combs that had belonged to Barry's mother, and her eyes sparkled with tears of joy that threatened to spill over at any moment. "You're absolutely breathtaking," Brooklyn Hayes breathed, adjusting the train of Monica's dress with reverent care. As her maid of honor, Brooklyn had been with Monica through every step of this incredible journey, from the desperate signing of that first contract to this moment of pure happiness. "I can't believe this is really happening," Monica whispered, her voice thick with emotion. 10 months ago, I was a woman with nothing but debts and desperation. Now I'm about to marry the love of my life, the father of my daughter, the man who saved my soul." "You saved each other," Brooklyn corrected gently, the same words Barry had spoken so many times. "And you created something beautiful in the process." A soft knock at the door interrupted their moment, and Cole Whitehead entered with baby Hope in his arms. At 7 months old, their daughter was the perfect blend of both parents. Barry's penetrating grey eyes and Monica's gentle spirit wrapped in a tiny package that had stolen every heart she'd encountered. "Someone wanted to see her mama before the ceremony," Cole said with a grin, carefully transferring Hope to Monica's arms. "Though I have to warn you, Barry's been pacing the groom's suite like a caged lion. I think he's more nervous about these vows than he was about any business deal." Monica's heart swelled with love as she looked down at her daughter, who was dressed in a miniature version of her wedding dress, complete with tiny pearl buttons and delicate lace trim. "Hello, my beautiful girl," she murmured, pressing a soft kiss to Hope's forehead. "Are you ready to watch Mommy and Daddy get married?" Hope gurgled in response, her tiny fist reaching up to grasp one of Monica's loose curls, and Monica felt her heart overflow with the kind of happiness she'd never imagined possible. "Mrs. Whitehead." A gentle voice from the doorway drew their attention to Madison Parker, who had become not just Barry's assistant, but a dear friend to their family. It's time. Monica nodded, carefully transferring Hope back to Cole's arms. Take care of her, she said, though she knew it was unnecessary. Cole had become a devoted uncle, and Hope was never safer than when she was in his arms. Always, Cole promised, his voice warm with affection. Now go marry my brother before he wears a hole in the carpet. The wedding ceremony was taking place in the plaza's grand ballroom, transformed into a garden paradise with thousands of white roses, cascading greenery, and soft candlelight that made everything glow with ethereal beauty. As Monica walked down the aisle, she was dimly aware of the guests, friends and family who had gathered to witness their love story, but her attention was focused entirely on the man waiting at the altar. Barry Whitehead stood at the end of the aisle like a prince from a fairy tale, resplendent in a perfectly tailored black tuxedo that emphasized his powerful frame and handsome features. But it was his eyes that took Monica's breath away, storm-grey depths that held a love so profound, so transformative, that she felt her knees go weak with the force of it. As she reached him, Barry extended his hand with a smile that could have lit up the entire city. "You're so beautiful," he whispered, his voice rough with emotion. "So perfect. I can't believe you're really going to be my wife." "I can't believe you're really going to be my husband," Monica replied, her voice trembling with joy. The man who was too afraid to feel anything, too proud to admit he needed someone, too broken to believe in love. "That man is gone," Barry said softly, his thumb tracing gentle circles on her hand. "You killed him with your kindness, your strength, your refusal to let me hide behind my walls. You brought me back to life, Monica. You made me human again." The ceremony began with the minister's words about love and commitment, but Monica barely heard them. She was lost in Barry's eyes, in the way he looked at her as if she were the most precious thing in his world, in the knowledge that after today they would be bound together not just by their daughter and their shared past, but by promises that would last forever. When it came time for their vows, Barry spoke first, his voice carrying clearly through the ballroom despite the emotion that threatened to overwhelm him. "Monica," he began, his grey eyes bright with unshed tears. "When I first met you, I was a man who believed that love was a weakness, that emotions were dangerous, that the only safe way to live was alone. I had convinced myself that my heart was dead, that I was incapable of feeling anything beyond cold calculation and ruthless ambition." He paused, his voice breaking slightly before he continued. "But you saw something in me that I couldn't see in myself. You looked past the ice and arrogance and cruelty to the man I used to be, the man I could become again. You loved me when I was unlovable, believed in me when I'd given up on myself, and showed me that the greatest strength a person can possess is the courage to love and be loved in return." Monica felt tears streaming down her cheeks as Barry's words washed over her, each one a gift more precious than diamonds. "You gave me everything I didn't know I was missing," Barry continued, his voice growing stronger with each word. "A home that's filled with laughter instead of silence, a future that's bright with possibility instead of empty with loneliness, a daughter who will grow up knowing that love is the most powerful force in the universe because she sees it every day in her parents' eyes." He took a shaky breath, his hand tightening on hers. "I promise to love you with every breath in my body, to protect you and our daughter with my life, to choose you every single day for the rest of our lives. I promise to be the man you see when you look at me, to deserve the love you've given me, to spend every moment proving that your faith in me wasn't misplaced." Barry's voice dropped to a whisper that somehow carried to every corner of the ballroom. "You brought me back from the dead, Monica. You took a monster and made him human, took a broken man and made him whole. I was lost in darkness until you became my light, and I will spend forever grateful that you chose to love me." By the time he finished, There wasn't a dry eye in the ballroom. Monica struggled to find her voice, overwhelmed by the depth of emotion in Barry's words, by the transformation she could see in his face, by the love that radiated from him like warmth from the sun. "Barry," she began, her voice trembling with tears and joy. "When I signed that contract 6 months ago, I thought I was selling my freedom to save my mother's life. I thought I was making a deal with a man who saw me as nothing more than a vessel for his heir, a transaction to be completed and forgotten." She smiled through her tears, remembering that first meeting in his cold office. The way he'd looked at her like she was a problem to be solved rather than a person to be loved. "But what I found was so much more than I ever dared hope for. I found a man who was drowning in his own pain, who had built walls around his heart to protect himself from being hurt again. I found someone who needed love as desperately as I needed hope, someone who was just as broken and scared as I was." Monica's voice grew stronger as she spoke, filled with the certainty that had carried her through every challenge they'd faced. "You say I brought you back to life, but the truth is, you saved me too. You showed me what it means to be truly cherished, to be seen and valued for who I am rather than what I can provide. You gave me a daughter who will grow up knowing that her parents' love story is proof that fairy tales can come true, that even the most impossible circumstances can lead to the most beautiful endings." She paused, looking out at their guests. Cole holding Hope, who was watching the ceremony with wide grey eyes, Brooklyn crying happy tears, Grace Williams, her mentor, beaming with pride, and dozens of other people whose lives had been touched by their love story. "I promise to love you through every season of our lives, through the storms and the sunshine, through the challenges and the triumphs, through the mundane moments and the extraordinary ones. I promise to be your partner in building the life we've dreamed of, to support your dreams as you've supported mine, to raise our daughter with the same love and devotion you've shown me." Monica's voice dropped to a tender whisper. "You were never a monster, Barry. You were just a man who had forgotten how to love and be loved. But I saw your heart from the very beginning, in the way you cared for me when I was sick, in the way you protected me from those who would hurt me, in the way you chose our family over everything else that once seemed important." She reached up to touch his face, her thumb brushing away a tear that had escaped his careful control. "I love you exactly as you are, and I love who you're becoming. I love our past, our present, and our future. Most of all, I love that we found each other when we both needed saving, and that we chose to build something beautiful from the ashes of our old lives." When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Barry's kiss was tender and passionate, and filled with all the love he'd never thought he'd be able to feel. It was a kiss that spoke of new beginnings and eternal promises, of hearts that had been broken and healed, of souls that had found their perfect match. The reception that followed was a celebration of love in all its forms, the love between husband and wife, the love of family and friends, the love that had transformed two broken people into something whole and beautiful. Barry and Monica danced their first dance to "At Last," their bodies moving in perfect harmony as they sang softly to each other, lost in their own private world of happiness. As the evening wound down and the guests began to leave, Barry and Monica found themselves alone on the hotel's terrace, Hope sleeping peacefully in Monica's arms. The city spread out below them like a glittering tapestry, beautiful and alive and full of possibilities. "Mrs. Whitehead," Barry said, his voice warm with satisfaction and love, "I like the sound of that." "Mr. Whitehead," Monica replied, her eyes sparkling with mischief, "I like the sound of that too." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the city lights twinkle like stars, both of them marveling at the journey that had brought them to this moment. "Do you remember what you said to me that first day?" Barry asked suddenly, his voice soft with memory. "When you signed the contract?" Monica smiled, remembering her prophetic words. I said maybe you were the one who should be worried about regret. You were right, Barry said, his arm tightening around her waist. I do regret something. Monica's heart skipped a beat. What? Barry's smile was tender as he looked down at their daughter, then back at his wife. I regret that it took me 35 years to find you. I regret every day I spent believing that I was better off alone. Every moment I wasted thinking that love was weakness instead of the greatest gift a person could receive. We found each other exactly when we were supposed to, Monica said, echoing the words she'd spoken so many times before. Any sooner, and we might not have been ready for what we have now. What we have now, Barry repeated, his voice filled with wonder and gratitude. A love that conquered every obstacle. A daughter who will grow up knowing that her parents' story is proof that miracles exist, and a future that's brighter than anything I ever dared dream. As they stood together on the terrace, surrounded by the city lights and the infinite possibilities of their shared future, Monica felt a peace settle over her that had nothing to do with the end of their wedding day and everything to do with the beginning of their married life. I love you, Barry Whitehead, she whispered, her voice carrying all the emotion in her heart, forever and always, through everything life brings us. I love you too, Monica Whitehead, he replied, his voice rough with emotion. You saved my soul, gave me a family, and showed me that love really is the most powerful force in the universe. Hope stirred in Monica's arms, her tiny fist reaching up toward the stars, and both parents smiled at the perfect symbolism of their daughter reaching for the limitless possibilities of the future. She's going to change the world, Monica said softly, watching their daughter with eyes full of love and hope. She already has, Barry replied, his voice filled with certainty. She brought us together, showed us what we were fighting for, gave us a reason to become better than we ever thought we could be. As the city slept below them and the stars shone above, the three of them stood together, a family born from the ashes of their old lives, transformed by love into something beautiful and eternal. Their story had begun with a contract written in desperation and signed in tears, but it had become something far more precious than any legal document could contain. It had become a love story for the ages, proof that even the coldest hearts could be warmed, even the most broken souls could be healed, even the most impossible circumstances could lead to the most beautiful endings. And as they finally turned to go inside, ready to begin their new life as a married couple, Monica knew that their greatest adventures were still ahead of them. They would face challenges and celebrate triumphs, weather storms and dance in sunshine, grow old together and watch their daughter create her own beautiful story. And as they finally turned to go inside, ready to begin their new life as a married couple, Monica knew that their greatest adventures were still ahead of them. They would face challenges and celebrate triumphs, weather storms and dance in sunshine, grow old together and watch their daughter create her own beautiful story. But through it all, they would have each other. And that, Monica reflected as Barry's hand found hers in the darkness, was more than enough. It was everything. Their hearts had been reborn, their love had conquered all, and their story would live forever, a testament to the power of love to transform even the most impossible circumstances into something beautiful beyond words. The end was really just the beginning. And what a beautiful beginning it was.